Welcome to the On Wax. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is. Welcome to this week's edition, episode 18 of Rainbows on Wax. I'm Alex.
I'm Steve.
We're going to jump almost right into this topic this week. In the box production. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it means
working in the software, in the door, in the computer, basically doing majority of the production in the box.
Which these days happens in studios as well as at home.
Yes.
I think it used to sort of be more of a term for like people kind of working from home.
Yep.
But now it's like totally blended.
Yeah.
So many productions I've worked on have had the whole thing in the box, half of it, a third of it. You know, there's definitely a portion of it that's always done in the box.
A lot of mixing, like people will mix on headphones with their DAW in the box. Like majority of it, it's just so accessible. There's complete recall. There's like studio hire is basically non-existent when you're working in the box.
You can do it anywhere, pretty much.
Anywhere.
Yeah. It used to be a lot harder with like all the satellite things that you need with the UA plugins, but you barely need that anymore. Yeah. There's a lot of, native stuff. There's awesome plugins that are all native anyway, to even just Logic ones, including Waves plugins and countless other ones, Isotopes.
You don't even need the interface now.
No.
Like I've taken my computer into a cafe with Bluetooth headphones and I've edited. Like I've edited everything I've recorded at the studio. I just edited, time stretched, didn't mix, but I set up the mix in those spaces. I wouldn't trust Bluetooth headphones to do my mixing.
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. It can be done. Like artists are doing them on Apple Pods and shit.
Yeah, for sure.
I
think I'd still trust like the DT 770s.
Yeah, I'd trust a designated set of audio headphones. Like
there's other more expensive ones too I've seen that are kind of like around the $2,000 mark that are sort of those big dedicated mixing headphones. They go up to
broad spectrums. Like
they're not very loud, but they're sort of more dedicated. I know some mix engineers who have used those a lot. Yeah. Even when they do have access to studios, they're still going back to those for referencing.
Yeah.
A few projects I've done, like one that, I guess, again, it's not all of it, but I'd say a majority of it was the Riot.
Yeah.
Definitely all the demoing was done in the box. So probably the only real instruments we had at the time was a guitar and a bass and vocal. So probably this exact mic you're seeing right here now.
It's going to be worth a fortune one day.
Maybe. A lot of cool stuff recorded through this.
You should sign it or just like
engrave it on the side or something. Yeah. But again, just done with a really basic setup using all, either Logic or UA guitar pedals and amplifier modeling stuff as well. With that project, I think we used a mixture of downloaded drum samples. So some of them would be from, I forget what it's called now. It's just wrecked my brain.
Splice or...
Well, no, Splice was one. Like, so Splice, there's plenty of Splice ones. There was Logic ones as well that are sort of already internally in Logic. But there was this other one that sort of before Splice was around.
Superior Drummer. That's another one.
I forget what
Addictive Drum Trigger.
Yeah.
What else is there? This is a fun game for me.
I know, to remember where these were downloaded from. They're basically these big drum packs that you could buy.
Oh, like Somatics and like...
It had like a drum name. Like it was like, it had something to do with like Beat something or... Anyway.
Beat Stars.
Yeah, you could go on and get these packs, but then you could share the download code. Like if you'd paid for it, you had like a handful of downloads. And once you've got it, you've got it. Yeah. So like, you could share the download codes between friends and you could buy like packs of like blues drums or shuffles or like... They did these ones that were like instead of Death Cab for Cutie, it was called like Death Cabbage.
Yeah. The drum sound inspos from the bands that people are trying to achieve.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
So we'd sort of build off of that. So often it was like, we'd often start with the drums because like it's such a defining part of a band, especially like the Riot. It was like, okay, let's like get some cool, rhythms going, and then added, guitars and bass to that, and then kind of added vocals afterwards. But yeah, predominantly until, we eventually did go to other studios. But we kind of quickly found that like redoing the drums was like really hard because like the drum samples were awesome.
And they're tuned to the song.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's like we're used to them, and it's just like, this is just a kind of a waste of time and money to re-record them. Sometimes though, like using drum samples, you're getting a wave, like a singular file. So you can't go like, I want to turn the kick up or down.
Yeah.
So in that regard, that was the tricky part where you'd have to go in and sample each drum and then build the MIDI out from there. So you have a mixable drum kit. Obviously the Logic one is great because it just does it straight away.
I love doing that.
Yeah.
You create a drum feeling.
Yeah.
Or you create your song. So you don't start with the drums. You start with your guitars, your vocal, your melodies, your rhythm in a sense of harmonic instruments.
Yeah.
But then you put it into Logic and you create their drummer. You make their drummer learn it.
Yeah.
And then you start manipulating from there. And then you start tuning the kit from there. And then you start like I love to, like I'm doing that at the moment.
Yeah.
With an artist, Samuel James. We're writing his whole record in the box.
Yeah.
Like no song is written. We kind of start every session with like, oh, this Slipknot track sounds sick. Like these sections here, or like this Linkin Park section, or this Mars Volta section, or Hermanos Guitares section, or like start converging genres,
Yeah.
And I'll find melodies like or guitar feelings in the same sphere and in the box, direct input guitars, amp simulation. We'll use exactly this mic as well as a vocal demos, like but then once we have arranged, especially for us, it's like arrange the guitar parts, like how we're going to set things up, what's a chorus, what's a verse. We kind of we'll just play bits and we're like that's the chorus, or that's the intro, like place them out. And once I have somewhat of an arrangement, I'll go into Logic and I'll start producing the drums around it.
Yeah.
And try and, because it's a record, like we're doing a full album, I'm using similar characteristics of the drum sound.
So you've got them all there for reference too.
It's all there.
If you are like suddenly like, oh, you know what? Like we want to use this drum sound and we want it throughout the entire record, it is maybe the easiest thing to do. You just go, oh, we're using the heavy drum kit now, not the punk one or the rock one. It's like, you just go in and go, all right, well, you can quite quickly reference how many drum kits, like
crazy,
so many. And two, because it goes all to MIDI as well, like if you want that option of just, changing everything into a MIDI sample, you can import all the different sounds that you want from wherever. You want them from Splice, you want them from, ones that you've sampled yourself. And with Logic, it's really easy. Like anyone out there who uses Logic, there's the sweet little button called Replace or Double Drums. And even if you've recorded a live kit, you can go in and just go, it recognizes the snare, it finds it all, it turns it to MIDI, and then you go, we want this snare sound. I actually heard this story. I don't know if this is true or not from back in the day, but I heard that the Mars Volta were at 301 in Byron for a day, and they had like something silly like 27 snare drums set up, all mic'd up.
Right.
And they had people there
sampling,
hitting them No, but hitting them all at the same time.
Whoa.
And getting the sample from 27 snares all being hit at the same time to use as some sort of replacement for something or other. I don't really know what it was. But I wouldn't put it past a lot of these, and back then it would have been a lot harder, to, whether or not they had the MIDI capabilities of replacing and doubling drums, or whether they actually had to have someone go in and physically cut and paste, every single snare hit.
Imagine doing that shit on tape.
What a nightmare.
Bro, that would take weeks.
You'd have to have people, you'd have to have a team doing it. Whereas these days you can just go, here, replace this.
Massey DRT, just this dynamic, click, render.
And it has the dynamic in there as well. There's so much capability to what you can control when it's all in the box.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing too is all your plugins, using external compressors and preamps and things like that. For one, all the good ones are really expensive. Any cool compressor or preamp is minimum $2,500 if you're using 500 series, all the way up to 5, 6, 10, 20 grand for decent outboard stuff.
An LA2, which is one sound, that's $25,000.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
And it's one thing.
It's one thing.
You need multiple of these things. I'd say using any of the cheap stuff, it just doesn't work. I'd go back to the box.
Yeah, comparatively, a UAD software. So we're recording in Luna, and we've got tape machines on our voices right now. That's it, I think. That's all we're using. Yeah. We're just using Struder tape. But comparatively to that same LA2, it's $80 to buy the software version. And I can 100% tell you that you would not be able to tell the difference with your human ears.
No, it takes a total audiophile to pick these things apart.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot to be said about using amazing preamps, amazing compressors, microphones, things like that. It's awesome. As soon as you're at the ability to be able to afford all that stuff and afford people to work it for you and run it, 100%. But even Corby Studio, for instance, he built, a studio, costs a lot of money, 2 treated rooms. But again, the way that he kind of designed it, which is the way that we've worked for so long, is everything kind of runs through the outboard gear and his expensive preamps and compressors, and then goes into the box. And from there, it kind of stays there. And everything is then mixed in the box. So yes, the signal coming in has had something cool done to it. And sometimes you get lucky and you're wow, this has just come in great. Let's just leave it. But more often than not, you're oh, we're going to add a EQ to it. We're going to compress it maybe. Yeah. We're going to add 2 EQs. We're going to add 2 compressors or delays or reverbs or things like that.
For me, that's the best way in our modern times. Being able to record through a desk or some kind of analog preamp and microphone, and using a controlled room. You can just use a controlled room and this mic and the preamps on that UAD device there, and you'll still get the depth and quality of using the LA2 in real life. You know what I mean? You need, you can do everything in the box. You can create, you can plug straight into that and do all your vocals there, but you're going to lack room dynamic, and rooms can definitely, separate the men from the boys. You know, especially for drums, recording live drums. The room makes a massive difference. The player in the room makes all the difference, and the mic choice compared to the player, compared to the room, makes huge difference.
There's just so many variables that are all gone in the box.
Yes.
They disappear because you just have them all at the click of a button.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about these things. Is the player good enough? Can they play in time?
So it is great, but we do lack the depth. So Logic drums, for example, that hi-fi quality just isn't there. You can still use, what I'll do with Samuel's music at the moment is I'll produce the drums in Logic. I'll bounce them out raw, so I'll take all the compression, room, everything off them.
Yeah.
And then I'll process them in Luna, so in UAD with analog modeled software. Still, it doesn't give you the human air moving in the space.
But for a lot of music, it's not necessary.
Yeah, for that music, style, exactly right. It's heavy metal. It's beat orientated. It's like it's about the voice and about the guitars. Yeah. You know, so it doesn't need it needs fast double kickers and intricate playing, and I can get that from Logic. If a drummer was to do that in a space like Yamanui, like they've got to be so meticulous with their playing, and they've got to be well rehearsed on the arrangement, but how they push that kick drum,
keep that even dynamic,
snare dynamics, like all of that, like how tight they can be with all their fills, and
that's right.
Like I'm not gonna edit that shit. Like the player's got to do that.
That's right.
You know,
I think too, like something that took me a while to even understand is a compressor is a dynamics processor, and it really is like when you understand what dynamics are, from playing, especially drums. Drums is a great indication of dynamics, but guitars too. You can hear if someone like strums it loudly or strums it quietly, and then what a compressor is doing is dynamically processing the hit, that if you like, for instance, a really easy one is like if you've got someone who hits softly, but you want it to be loud, you need to dynamically process it to have it sound like it's loud. But the drummer is playing with chopsticks or something and doing it really quietly, and it gives this whole amazing feel and sound to the song. Again, on the opposite scale is someone who hits really, really hard, but it's like too loud and you need it to come down, and you need to fit vocals on top of this really loud kit. That's what a compressor's doing. It's just sort of like pushing it down so you're not losing any intensity. It sounds intense and it sounds like, whoa, crack, and there's all this room sound because it's bouncing back because it's so loud. Whereas you're not getting that if you're hitting it quietly. It's not necessarily, unless you've got like a bathroom or something, going to bounce around the room. So it's something to understand for like, young producers out there is like what compressors are actually doing. And, we don't need to like understand all the theory behind it, but a really easy thing to understand is it's processing dynamics. Do you want something that is loud to be soft? Do you want something that is soft to be loud? That's where like compressors kind of come into play. And then how they're colored and all those things, like again, you get so much choice with all the stuff in the box. Because you can just go through and be like, oh, this one's not really doing what I want. Try the other one. Try the LA2A. Try the 1176. Try the 1178.
It's so easy to just switch between rather than go to a patch bay and just like unplug, let something warm up and then like dial it back in by hand.
I hate patch bays too. It's so annoying. And then you plug it in, it's not working because it's like, oh no, it's in the one like a 1 millimeter to the right, and didn't read it properly because someone had printed the numbers like and just put them all ajar a little bit. Actually, this one's not in 22, it's in 24 because like I forgot to like repatch it.
Then
in the back.
22 was noisy, so we had to move it to 24, but it doesn't say over there. So it's just
the green cables are all noisy. So it's just going to wreck the whole $6,000 or $20,000 compressor that you're using anyway.
And talk about chewing into budget
really quickly.
Far out.
And time. And it's definitely a luxury that is amazing and eventually like awesome if that's where you want to end up. But again, like, we're talking about like a lot of real music here, and not that pop music isn't, but guaranteed like pop music is, I would say these days, aside from the vocal, 100% in the box.
Most of it.
Yeah. Like I reckon most pop music, I'd say 80%, 90% of it is made using Splice or something very similar. So yes, potentially at some point somebody's recorded a guitar part and put it in there, of course. Somebody's recorded piano and put it in there, of course. But as far as you as the song maker, you're going onto Splice, you're finding your beats, you're finding your pianos, you're finding your synths, your guitars, whatever it is, you're putting in the key, in the tempo, pull the song together. You've made it completely in the box, and then you've got a singer coming in and doing a top line. so much music is just completely done with Splice. People in the studio are not picking up one instrument at all. They're just using samples that make sense.
Keyboards.
Yeah, trending samples, like... It even goes back to the story of the Rihanna Umbrella. Like, that's a GarageBand drum beat. So they just gone, oh, this is cool. This is good enough. Let's just grab that. And it's still on GarageBand. You can go and use it for free. If you want to use that beat, you go and grab it. It's there for you to use because it's a free beat. So much pop music. It's just the way that it's done. I've made heaps of it. Yeah, you never pick up an instrument at all.
So the computer's become an instrument because of this new world, right? And I fucking love it, man. Like, I love...
Oh, it's awesome.
Like, I've learned the DAW now to a point where it's my blank canvas and I'll just go and paint colours, right?
Yeah.
I'll use that term a lot with people. So all Stonewax music is that. It's in the box. It's just like trying something, messing it up, like, guitar sound, like throwing a bit crusher on that guitar sound, like trying to just basically find sounds in those moments what I can't do on other people's records.
Yeah.
So complete experimentation.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's such a beautiful thing. And now I can go to Sam's music and I'll be like, here's our approach. Like, let's write everything this way.
Yeah.
And then we book the studio to do maybe live drums in these two sections, but we're going to leave all the metal drums in these other sections because they're sick.
Yeah.
We're going to re-record your vocals on this mic.
Yep.
We're going to record some backing vocals by these two session musicians.
Yep.
We're going to do some live strings over all of these software strings parts we've recorded. So we get that live violin voicing on those movements.
Yep.
We're going to get a grand piano player on this section. Like, it's creating all the room to move early. And because it's a songwriting process, we've done miles of the work. Like, the songs are so close to being finished.
Yeah.
Without a studio, without having all our vocal parts written.
Yeah.
So I think, like, this is one way to do it, right? This isn't the way to do it, but this is one way to do it.
A lot of people do it this way, though. Like, it just makes sense. Like, whether you're a producer, songwriter, an artist.
For the alternative genres, like, write music this way.
Well, also pop.
Yeah, pop.
Pop probably uses this more than alternative music in a lot of ways. Like, especially things like Splice.
Yeah, sample-based music, like electronica, like...
Because also, too, like, using samples, like, you're getting access. A lot of them, like, it starts as a real person.
Yeah.
There's a real person somewhere. It's not like it's, like, AI generated. We're not there yet. I'm sure we will be.
We are there.
Well, yeah,
we're not going to talk about it while we're there.
Splice, I don't think is. Like, I mean, maybe it is. Maybe there's still somebody kind of putting stuff in and being like, oh, this is cool. But, even going on to Splice, like, the guitar parts, like, is somebody playing it at some point.
Yeah.
If they're not playing it, they're putting it together from somebody else's parts. All the string sections, a lot of the drums are still real. All the hip hop stuff obviously isn't. It's using 808s but still they could be like punching them in and like, or using Fruity Loops or something to kind of like create these loops. Or they're using samples from old records or things like that and kind of pulling them apart and making sure that they, I guess, own the music that they can put on Splice. You're getting updates too through those programs of like what's trending. So if you're a pop artist, like, you can kind of see what the vibe is and where it's kind of going, because you'll see like how many people are experimenting or using different sample packs. And it's probably a pretty good indication of what's like coming out. Also stuff that, like, say if you are a singer-songwriter, acoustic person, or that's like your strengths, but you're working with somebody and you're like, oh, like, I'd love to have like a house beat, under this song. And it's like, well, that's not me. Like, I don't know the first thing about making house music. So you just go to one of these programs and be like, house beat, bang, there you go.
Yeah.
comes up to the tempo that you need. You know, a lot of them are tempo mapping anyway, mappable, so they can just, you know, you just stretch them out, or like you'll drop it in. If it's an AIFF file, it'll just go to the tempo anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it just saves so much time, so much energy. Yeah.
For idea generation, it's the best. It's the best.
And I reckon it sticks too. There's like so many songs, like even there's that Sabrina Carpenter one that was like a big one of hers, and I know it's more like a lyrical thing, but she was kind of like mucking around with lyrics, and at the end of the song she's like, oh, none of that's going to like stay in there though, and it's like actually in the song that's got, you know, 1 billion streams or something. There's that other big sort of one where he's like, okay, now the drop, and like then the drop comes, like leaving all those weird cool mistakes in there that seem like things, oh yeah, we could just edit out that person just kind of talking, or there was that other guy where he's kind of like, oh, I want something to be like whatever that riff was, and then it ends up being the riff. And resampling vocals has been really common in a lot of electronic music.
It's a huge trending thing right now. Hip hop, it's everywhere. Like
also like the Justin Bieber stuff, like I think Skrillex talks about it with like how they made that sort of Diplo Skrillex Justin Bieber thing, which was arguably like the beginning of pop meets electronic music. They were like the biggest ones doing it. And he was like, yeah, we just like grabbed a bit of his voice and just ran it through all sorts of fun, crazy processing to turn it into this noise. And that's what ends up being like a part of the cool hook of the song. I've done that heaps too, and you never know, like, I don't know what Skrillex uses, but often it can be like guitar pedals. You know, like in the box guitar pedals, like rather than like, I don't know, there's other things I'm sure that could do it, synthesizers and different stuff, but guitar pedals are just so obnoxious.
I love them.
Yeah, because they're distorting, they're overdriving, they're doing all these fun things that...
I love getting like live recorded drum toms and then running them through those rat pedals simulations, like just getting all of that griminess, you know. Like
I love the Octafuzz stuff. You know, where you've got octave of fuzzing going on. You know, big ones that you would hear with like Tame Impala would be probably things like Devil Lock and the Sound Toys ones, where you've got this kind of, again, they're just like essentially overdriving and, you know, keeping the volume right, but it's just like over driving the original signal.
Saturating, they call it.
Saturating, darkness, you know, crunch. All these different things. Another one I love is Monster Fuzz, which is the Logic one. Where it kind of has this really erratic thing that it like turns off. Like when you start really driving it, like only some notes will peak out. Because it's like pushing it so hard that it's kind of glitching. It's
hitting the lid, clipping.
Exactly. In this great way. And then, you know, you can resample those sounds and then go, okay, that's the one. Let's press that down, and we've got that, and we can go back to the original sample and leave that one as an original and use some kind of cool thing. Same with the vocal. You hear it all the time in modern pop too, is like they press the vocal, reverse it, run it through some guitar pedals and some reverbs and delays, and suddenly you've got this cool vocal grab, I think they call it. Yeah.
Striking a chord, like distorted chord. Cutting the end off, reversing it. And then throwing a big slappy tape delay on after it. So it's just this swell, and then it releases into a delay. Like,
it's a classic one, hey? The big ones too that people, you know, if you're a young producer, is like the crash. It's like in and out of choruses, that like big swell that goes like it's a crash.
It's a reversed crash.
And then you cut it hard, and you can have it crash out too. You can have the original sample in there too, so it can go do the whole big reversey thing into a stop, and then a crash out. All those sort of sub drops and things like that. The other vocal one that you hear a lot is basically you trim like the first like 2 bars or 2 beats off the vocal, you reverse it, you saturate it in reverb 100%, you press it down, and then you flip it back around, and you have it start just before the vocal starts, and
comes from space and then goes dry.
Exactly. It's like such a common one.
Yeah.
There's in so much pop music, like at the beginning of the track, so much dance music. It's like everywhere. Everyone uses that little trick, and it's so simple, so easy to do. It's just a matter of kind of timing it right and, you know, getting it all happening.
In the drum world, like a lot of metal drummers, so back in the day, they would use triggers. So say if there's a trigger, a MIDI trigger on the snare drum and a MIDI trigger on the kick drum, for the consistency of the mix, they would go in the box and replace all those kick and snare samples.
Yeah.
So they're just like, they're at that level all the time. Sometimes like the consistency in the moment, the player just can't get that dynamic right, you know, or they might do a side stick and just like fuck up one snare sound and stuff. So that, you know, it's all part of mixing. Like it's all part of it.
Kick's a big one too. Like if you got a long song, you know, drummer might just straight up be tired. Like rarely do you get someone who's like consistently hitting the kick drum.
Especially metal, like that fast paced double kickers, and it takes away all the mechanics too. Like, because that stuff can really cloud up a mix. Squeaky pedals, like the drum still moving, like, you know, the claps of sticks coming back together, and, you know, rims being accidentally hit or whatever. Like, yeah, you can still keep those drum sounds or whatever. You know, you
can mix them together. Keep
the overheads, like the air moving, but you have all the sample replace kick and snares, or the toms, and, you know, that's just like, that's mixing. Not 101, but I'd call that 102.
Yeah. It's a few steps in.
Yeah.
Also, too, like soft drums, too. Like when you want that soft kick consistently, and then when they give you one extra hard one, it's like, oh.
Yeah, you fucked up the spell, bro.
Yeah. Or if, like, you don't want them resting on the kick, you know? Like every time they need to be, like, taking their foot off.
Beat her off. Yeah. Beat her off. Like that, you don't want to mess up the player's mindset in those moments.
Yeah. And it's just easier to go, okay, well, either I'll just like replace them all. Or, you know,
turn the kick off and just you record one, sample it, and go.
Yeah, it's done.
Drum replace. Yeah.
Yeah, can just worry about other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, especially if like for some reason the cymbals are too loud, it's like, okay, we're actually just gonna record these things separately. So you've got all the separate drum sounds, and then you can just go in and overdub the cymbals and get the nice air happening, and you know, get that room sound kind of coming in, but it's not all cluttered with them like playing toms, and you know, then you got to worry about EQs because like the toms are getting picked up in overheads as well as
Paulie. And I, like, Paulie is a genius at that sort of stuff. Like he'll build, like I do it too sometimes, but building the drummer sound like piece by piece, like you were just saying. Go in and put all the kicks or kick and snares, leave the cymbals out until last, you know, then play the hat feeling into the sections. In the chorus you just like move the cymbals in and you do it, and then the last thing you just do all the drum fills. I'll do that with Logic Drummer too. I was like, I'll go and put all my whole drum arrangement in and then decide where the fills go last.
Exactly.
You know, once I get all my solos and guitars and vocals in, like, all right, this needs a fill on that. Like we'll go and adjust that MIDI.
Well, you can also like trial different fills.
You
know, so you're not sort of like doing if you're wanting to do like a whole drum pass and it's like, but the fill wasn't right. You don't want to have to go in and do the whole drum pass again. If everything else was good, all that other just boring stuff, you know.
It's not like you're through the glass and you're going, can you do a sugar da 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 da?
Exactly. But if you are, at least it's just like just that section that you're working on. You know, just that piece. If you want something different and fun there for the fill. You know, you want your trash mics, you know, recording that. Or you go in and get something that's just unbelievably played by some random person and slot that right in there. It's like, oh, well, not one of us could have played that, but whoever recorded this can. In the box is definitely a great way. It's used just so commonly these days. It's nothing to be like, oh, we want the, you know, notoriety of like recording everything live in a studio. It's just so rare for that even to happen, even with a lot of the best bands now. Rarely do you see everything outside of the box.
The other beautiful thing is, like, with this record I'm doing with Sam, we're going to create, like, I'm writing all the music and he's writing all the vocal content. And the goal is to produce the record and then for him to find the right players to play that shit. And how he'll unfold the electronic sessions. Like, will he use backing tracks? Like, that can all come later. Like, that doesn't have to be practiced and performed in the moment to make the record sounding good. No, you just produce it, find the right players later, you know. Yeah. And if the right players are out there and they hear this stuff and they dig it, they're going to try and do it. Yeah. They're going to learn it.
Yeah, exactly. You know?
It's a new day.
Yeah. I heard about that from, this is an old story from, who was it? Tommy Emmanuel or something. And he probably told this story a lot on stage. But he was saying about this thing about how he sort of learnt to play guitar, and I think they were listening to, you know, records and things, and you couldn't see the person playing, so they have these enormous hands, him and his brother, and like were playing these sort of impossible chords. But it was because they were listening to songs that had capos on them, and they didn't realize that there was like what a capo was, so they kind of just did this thing the hard way in order to learn.
You grew a like sixth finger.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and there's a lot of artists who kind of play like that. Yeah. You know, John Mayer's one of them, like just sort of these giant hands that can stretch the whole guitar to play these impossible chords.
Yeah.
That, you know, create this amazing music out of. Yeah, it's funny how, you know, just through not understanding how it's all made, you create these epic musicians. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of artists even sort of sound like auto-tuned these days.
Yeah.
Like young people, it's like...
Oh, who's that singer? Teddy
Swims.
Teddy Swims, dude.
Yeah.
Like, speaking of that, like hearing a record and hearing all of the harmonic content that goes on.
Yeah.
Like a horn section mixing with guitars and bass. Like, he's singing through those ranges.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
Controlling it, and you know, it probably comes from years of listening to other people who have tuned or corrected their vocals, and then you've learnt to like actually hit those notes and hit that vibrato. Yeah, it's pretty epic what some people are capable of doing these days. Mm-hmm. In saying all this too, like as much as you can have all this amazing control, I wouldn't have it as something to like always rely on.
No.
You know, the core of music kind of comes from performance, and but at the same time, it's hard to argue with the facts. Like the biggest music in the world is probably pop music at the moment, and they're not afraid or ashamed to do any of this stuff and layer it and use it over and over and over.
Yeah.
You know, it is arguably, I think, on top. I'd say, like it's. You know, we're not sort of in an alternative trend at the moment.
No, it's definitely Charlie XCX and Billie Eilish.
Sabrina Carpenter's and Taylor Swift's and Billie Eilish, and
it's all like home studio. You know, they're using some analog gear, probably $5,000 to $10,000 microphone for the vocals or whatever. But it's still that same process of just diving in through that window.
Yeah. Billie Eilish is a perfect example of in the box. Yeah. Like Phineas talks about it all the time. Like they just did it in her bedroom.
Yeah.
You know, and in the beginning, I doubt they had any kind of crazy microphones. They would have just had normal stuff. Unless for some reason they, you know, were given crazy money to buy stuff. But I'm not surprised if they don't change that process much. I'm sure like any big Billie Eilish fans would know.
But she's a quiet vocalist.
Yeah, like she is, yeah.
She's not singing so loud where it bounces off the walls. Like,
no, not at all.
These are things you got to consider because, like we said, like a controlled studio environment can really help if you're a hard drummer or if you're a hard singer or if you're using very loud, noisy guitar amps and you want that Jimi Hendrix feedback. Like, you're not going to get that in the box. You can definitely, like I can get, like if I'm sitting in front of some loud monitors and I've got my guitar and I'm going through UAD and I'm using the Marshall stack and I can get that feedback loop happening.
Yeah, totally.
But like how reactive it is, it's not the same as Hendrix walking up to that cabinet, man.
Yeah,
like
tube amps and
you know what I mean? Like there's a difference there. Like, and you know, you can kind of judge what you need out of it as an artist. And
Same with even loud singers. Like I saw like Amy Winehouse recording her stuff, and like I'm pretty sure they were probably like somewhere like Abbey Road or something with who is it again that did all this stuff? Mark Ronson.
Mark Ronson.
Yeah, but I saw the vocal setup they had, and it was like mattresses like just stacked up. They literally just had like a foam mattress like over her head, and like because they're in big rooms in Abbey Road, and I guess for whatever reason like there's no vocal booths there.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. Like you see a lot of those old singers, like they just sang in the big rooms.
Yeah.
But probably quiet singers, and Amy, I'd say, was maybe a bit louder.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, they just had like what looked like mattresses they'd found on the side of the road.
What do they call, what's that removalist blanket? That stuff works a treat. If you can,
that stuff too. Get in the cupboard.
Yeah. Sing into your clothes.
Yeah. Yeah, clothes and cupboard is such an easy one.
Yeah.
Just hop in there and have a sing, it'll be dead.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer of using live rooms. I personally like singers singing in rooms.
Yeah.
But again, I guess I've been lucky enough to have a lot of those rooms be studios and treated.
Yeah.
So they have a nice sound to them.
Mm-hmm.
But then I love listening to bands like Pinegrove, which do sound like they're recorded in the house, and like there's all sorts of bleed and like nasty kind of like reverbs happening. And I love that too.
Yeah.
It just depends on your style.
Yeah. If you listen to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Honey, I think is the song name. It's quite a recent one. KG album.
Yeah.
It's the acoustic guitar. It's like all room.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like they've got a 57 this far away from the guitar, right? But it's the aesthetic, It's the sound of that song, and that people love it.
Yeah, that's right. They do.
So if it works, if the performance cool,
run it,
roll with it.
Yeah. Is that enough talking about In the Box? Feel free to reach out to either of us on our Instagrams, Facebook, whatever, if you have any more questions about working in the box. But otherwise, I would encourage you just to go buy a box and start working in it.
Yeah.
If you don't have one already.
Tune in next week.
Rainbows on Wax.
Rainbow.